Now, the rest of the story.
All right, welcome back. Well, there hasn't been any cultivating done yet, and the window, I'd say, is closing rather quickly. The corn's really starting to stretch, and I'll show you guys some of the corn here really quick. That's where we're headed. But I figured you guys would want to see, for those of you that are interested in seeing what the beans look like. They don't look like our best crop ever. These were planted at about 120,000 seeds per acre from multiple sources, and not just me, not including me even, have said that this was the worst year to decide to plant a lower population. Well, when you're under the gun and making more than just one or two last minute decisions, you tend to overlook the population and minor things such like that. I should have left it at 140,000, and I'm hearing that people that planted at 140,000 seeds to the acre were getting anywhere from that 120 to 130,000 seeds per acre area, somewhere in there. Well, you can still get a pretty awesome soybean yield at 80 to 100,000 seeds to the acre. I have not done a population count on any of this yet. The only thing I've really noticed is that the stuff really isn't growing and stretching, and it really isn't as tall as it would typically be right now in most previous years. The big difference and the big goal I'm aiming for is that when we get to harvest this fall, we won't have this whole field of beans leaning off to the side, because what happens there is that ideally you go through and you harvest it with a combine in one direction, you know, ideally when it's leaning into the combine head, because when you try to harvest it when it's leaning away from the head, you can lose 5 to 10 bushels to the acre purely just from the direction you're combining it. There's some stuff that I cut, it was leaning pretty bad, and I planted that at 140,000 last year. The lodging was pretty nasty, and what happened was when I combined it one direction, because I actually had to open the headland up, so I didn't really have much choice, but it was a 20 bushel to the acre difference from the opening round on the field. When I was harvesting the piece with the beans leaning away from me, it was running 20 bushels less, as opposed to coming back the other direction and the beans were leaning into the head. So it didn't take much time to really make the decision, the call to drive to the end of the field, spin around, shut the combine, shut the head off, shut the threshing unit off, and drive all the way back to the other end of the field and gain that other 20 bushels to the acre. It was worth the little bit of time that it took to do that. Harvesting last year, the time that you could actually harvest came at a premium, because the last 2 years harvest has just been, well, a little bit more difficult than normal, just from the above normal rain we've been getting. And I guess this is actually a pretty good example of row shutoffs and what they really do for your yield. The rows, as long as you're driving at a steady, constant speed, and that's actually what usually gets me, but usually the rows will shut off. They're typically about 6 inches from the headland here. The problem that affects that, even though we're running RTK, the bugs are pretty bad. Even though we're running RTK, what happens is that when you're pulling into the headland, you're either pulling into the headland, you're usually shifting down a gear and you're throttling down. So what happens is it kind of throws off, throws off where the shutoffs would typically shut off, just because you're not staying at a steady speed. Makes a big difference. I've noticed that in the years that we've been running it. You can kind of see the difference there. We have a little bit of overlap. I think that was actually from me speeding up coming into the headland, because I made the outside round going out and I came back this way, so I was actually coming into this headland kind of fast, and then I would have spun around. You can see I was coming back in that way, and those rows, there's a little bit of a delay from when they started to drop. But I really don't, well, let's just say I forgive myself, because I'm the one that planted the corn and the beans on this farm. And both times I planted the whole farm after, what was it, 10 o'clock at night. Ran until the sun came up both times, and I gotta say, the crops look awfully nice. I know I'm blinding you looking into the sun. But the soybeans, they're starting to grow nice. They look pretty sick. They're slow to grow. I guess the seed emergence was a big issue just because the ground was so cold this year. And as far as tillage practices go, I was told that if it was planted, if it was fall tilled, if you worked it in the fall, that was huge. That made a big difference as to whether or not the ground warmed up and it really got the plant up and running, like all this. And you can see from the bean field that we were just in how dry it was between the rows and how much moisture is in between these corn rows yet. This was all cultivated. It's going to be sprayed here with the second pass. Watch out, bud. In 2 days, 2 to 3 days actually, depending on how long it takes a sprayer to get here. That does kind of make some of the decisions as to what we do around here. We do not have a sprayer of our own. We do not have a top dressing machine of our own, so we hire it done. Crop Max is going through. They have gone through and they top dressed a bunch of my corn already. Granted, not all of it, just a field that looked like it needed the... Really? I'm gonna say, this is what happens when you take the dog with you. She snapped off. Well, that's the one done. Thanks, Calvin. I guess we didn't need that plant. We don't have any of the machinery to do a lot of that applying ourselves. You can make a case for us being able to go through and spray our own crops. We keep expanding acres wise. I could see us getting there, but as of right now, it's just easier to call Andrew currently and tell him to spray this, spray that, when are you gonna get it done, and we don't have to worry about it. We also don't have to worry about with whatever the chemicals, however they react with different crops. I'm thinking dicamba right now actually, but you don't really hear too much about dicamba anymore, at least not as much as you did last year. But Grandpa, and really the whole reason why I came out here to do this video, other than the fact I'm not trying to brag, I'm not bragging, but our corn does look really nice. It's finally starting to grow. It seems like it sat for so long, but knee high by 4th of July I think is pretty well there. What I wanted to say though, Grandpa told us what people used to refer to when they were growing up, when he was growing up, about knee high by 4th of July. Everybody thinks that, just like I'm standing next to the corn right now, that yep, it's knee high. What Grandpa used to say is, when you were growing up, knee high by 4th of July meant that you'd stand next to the crop, you'd grab the top leaf that was out, and then you'd actually stand next to it and hold the leaf up. Now see, that's basically up to my hip, and that would justify like knee high by 4th of July. So by doing that, which is up to my hip, if it was knee high by doing this way back when Grandpa was growing up, then it was considered a good crop. Say things have really changed significantly. I mean, we don't do any of our field work with horses anymore. Well, I guess you could say we do our field work with multiple horses, not just a single horse-drawn implement anymore. But we did have, I really don't want to talk too highly about it, but our corn does look nice. I was told that as far as our crop goes, that we have one of the top 3 best looking fields or corn crops in the county as of a few days ago. Really not sure how we did that, because honestly I think we all pretty much felt like we'd all taken a kick to the gut the whole time we were planting both our corn and beans. Is it just with the crop conditions we had, it just didn't feel right when we were doing it. But in hindsight, we did it at what turns out to be the best time, under the best circumstances that we had, because the week that we got done planting our corn, we got rained out, and those last 60 acres that were actually top dressed of mine just yesterday, we planted those that field a week after we got rained out from the week we were running. So we ran for a full week, or 5 days, not a full week. We ran for 5 days around the clock, and we got all but 60 acres of our corn in. And that last 60 acres was actually mudded in, and not the worst mudding conditions, but right up there. I mean, I felt sick doing it. But that corn is coming up. The corn looks nice. I'm gonna go through and cultivate it here in probably another few days. This was all cultivated and it looks awesome. I was actually told that from how our corn looks this year compared to last year, that our corn crop actually looks amazing comparing it to last year. So I guess it's something to be proud of, or happy with. So with that, that's a crop conditions report for Southwest Wisconsin, because I know there's a lot of places that just look terrible, and it's just I guess the hand everybody was dealt. So, all right, thanks for tuning in, thanks for watching. Take care, take it easy, keep in touch. I'll talk to you guys later.